Welcome to 2019 and a brand new year of the Rich Carroll program. I am your host, Rich Carroll. So yesterday I watched the president's address on why we need funding for a border wall. And shortly after that was the Democrat response on why we don't need the funding. And so here we are at a government shutdown, a partial government shutdown, and both sides have their feet dug into the ground, and it doesn't look like we're going anywhere. But I don't really want to focus on this particular government shutdown, but rather I want to talk about shutdowns in general. And if you look at where we are, obviously we're here because Republicans failed to secure funding during the first 2 years that they held Congress. Plain and simple. And the president should have held their feet to the fire with a veto pen during the previous spending bill opportunities. But, it just didn't happen. That was a huge opportunity blown by the president and the GOP. But what if we had two opportunities last year to end partial government shutdowns altogether? And I want to bring your attention to two such bills that would have effectively done that. The first one is H.R. 5313, the End Federal Shutdowns Act of 2018. Now, that bill was introduced by Congressman Mo Brooks of Alabama, and he told Breitbart in an exclusive, basically, if there is a government shutdown, then the spending levels would go back to the previous year's spending levels. So that right there basically eliminates a partial government shutdown because everything is getting funded. The second thing that this bill would do is normally at the threat of a shutdown, you have a giant spending bill. And there will be all these special interest amendments, stuff that's not even related to funding the government that is slipped into the spending bill. If the government is guaranteed to be funded at previous levels, then Congress is free to vote no for the proposed spending bill because the government would be funded nevertheless. The other piece of legislation that was introduced was S. 2339, the Government Shutdown Prevention Act of 2018, and that was introduced by Senator Rand Paul. And Senator Paul said in a press release, instead of government shutting down operations over stalled funding in the future, the bill would institute a 1% cut to then current funding levels for any agency, program, and activity that Congress failed to fund by the start of the fiscal year. Every 90 days thereafter, funding would be reduced by another 1% if an agreement is not enacted. So along the same lines of Congressman Brooks, basically go to the previous year's funding level minus 1%, and then every 90 days after, if it's still not funded, 1% more comes off. Sounds like pretty common sense legislation, doesn't it? Well, if you start looking at the details of these two bills, Congressman Brooks' bill only had 7 co-sponsors, and Rand Paul's bill only had 1 co-sponsor. And what a co-sponsor is basically a senator or a representative can throw their weight behind a bill and say they would like to see it brought up for a floor vote. And so you have to ask yourself, why is nobody supporting this legislation? Is it because government shutdowns are just an effective tool for demonizing Republicans and demonizing Democrats? Is it just a political tool to get projects and agendas passed? I don't know if that is the reason, but one would think that if Washington really wanted to fix the problem of government shutdowns, then they would have supported one of these proposals. Now, these bills have since expired since we are in a new congressional session, but if you wanted to see something like it, then you could contact your legislators and tell them to reintroduce a government shutdown prevention bill. And of course, you can always reference my sources section for the relevant legislation. Other than that, grab your popcorn and watch the political circus unfold. Guys, I'm Rich Carroll. Thank you for tuning in. God bless.